What is something they said on a first date that immediately prevented a second? Story 1. I asked what her hobbies were or what she liked to do for fun, and she said Netflix and talking to boys. I was like, oh, I like Netflix too. What shows? She responded with, I just like having something on and sitting there. I don't really have favorite shows. I don't like doing anything that makes me sweat, and I don't like hobbies. I noped out of that date in like 25 minutes. You like nothing? Not only am I the complete opposite of that, but she admitted to not liking something to do. Fuck out of here. Story 2. Are you sure you want to eat that? I wanted some fried banana peppers in addition to my small salad. I was also 118 pounds and exercised regularly. Good thing that dude was a jerk because I was on the fence about canceling my drinks date with another guy if this one went well. Luckily, Mr. Judgy McJudgerson was not it, and the man I may have canceled became my husband. Thank you, Bachelor number 1, for being an ass. Story 3. I had a dude do nothing but monologue about his ex the entire date. He kept repeating the same, but I'm totally over her line. It got so bad he even started showing me pictures and her social media, showing me that she was dating someone new now. I kinda just realized this dude needed someone to talk to in that moment, and I really had nothing better going on, so fuck it. Speak your truth, man. The date was 2.5h long. Story 4. Not what he said, what he did. Took out his teeth and put it on a napkin to eat his steak. When I looked horrified, he said, Meth fucks your teeth up, but I'm thankful I'm clean now. Brother, I'm thankful you are too. But I am a vain and terrible person, and that's why I never called you back. I have always wished nothing but love and success in my heart. I'm sorry. Story 5. For me, it's rarely about what is said, more about what isn't said. I can't believe how stupid hard it is to find people who know how to carry on a conversation without me doing all the work. Like when two of these people meet, do they just blankly stare at each other till they bang? Boring. Story 6. Lunch date asked me what I'd do if I had $1 million. Stated status quo stuff. Pay off debt, invest. I asked him what would he do, and his reply was, I'd buy my mother a house. I replied, wow, that is very kind. He said, nah, I hate my mother, and if I buy her a home, maybe she will then stay the fuck out of my life. Story 7. He was obviously someone with money and probably status that my roommates set me up with. He saw me at the vacation home of one of my roommates, and they've been vacation neighbors for years, near NYC. I am absolutely not someone with money or power, especially not at that time. He took interest. They set it up for him. He was attractive and polite. Came to the door to pick me up and said hello to all the roommates before leaving and gave a time we would be back. He drove. He paid. It was a lovely date. But during the date, he gently let me know his dad was someone with exclusive rights to helicopter for movies to shoot scenes from the air. Mostly in NYC, but also in most places in the USA. It had come up in the get-to-know-you conversation when I asked about his family. He also told me he couldn't tell me his last name so that if we date, he would know I was dating him and not his family name. I had asked, as I was very cautious who I dated and always liked to do a background check before going out. I could tell he was genuine about it, and not trying to impress me or lie. My roommates wouldn't tell me his last name either. It actually scared me. And the thought of the power dynamics and imbalance in a marriage of me from a humble, small, rural area and him with a family with money, power, and influence stopped me from accepting the second date. I've heard horror stories of women divorcing from high-powered men and losing the kids and life being ruined. He didn't seem like someone that would do that, but you never know. Also, if anyone knows who that would be, please tell me LOL, I've always been curious about it. Story 8, 2 fun stories. The first? I was talking about my experience going to Chicago. I said it was a cool place, but too easy to end up lost somewhere. The guy immediately said, yeah, there's too many black people there. Then a different guy told me in the middle of the date, you're overweight and you have bad posture, you should go back to the gym. I said nope to both, although the first one still tried for a while to get me to go back out with him until I blocked his number. Story 9. He wouldn't stop talking about getting laid, even said how most women sleep with him on the first date. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but this guy seemed really full of himself, to the point that it was a major turnoff. He really killed it when I told him I gave him a fake number, Google Voice, and he said he not only knew but wouldn't tell me how because I gave someone like him a fake number. We paid our bills, he went to the restroom, and I dipped out. He didn't see me pull in when I arrived, so imagine my surprise when he pulls up beside me at a light and starts shouting at me from his car. I've been using a Google Voice number for online dating for years. I always tell guys, and he's the only one who wasn't respectful of me trying to be safe. Story 10. answered a phone call from his mom, and then proceeded to tell her, while looking me in the eye, that the date is going great and that he can really see a future with me. This was less than an hour into the first date. I was already a little annoyed because the guy definitely used photos from years earlier on his Tinder that didn't really look like him now. But I was going to let it slide because I was having a good convo with him. Then that awkward, weird phone call happened and shuttered any opportunity the guy had for a second date, lol. Story 11. We didn't even get that far, but a friend set me up for a date with a lady from his work. I called her the day of our date to coordinate. I told her I'd prefer to meet somewhere, but she said she needed me to pick her up because she had 2 DWIs in the last few months and couldn't drive. She also explained that she was driving down the wrong side of the interstate on the last one. I just said, yeah, this isn't going to work out. And she was upset, but I didn't care. Then I called my friend to ask him why he would set me up with her given the mess her life is in, and he said he just thought I would like her body. In more descriptive terms, not worth it. Story 12 was a few things together, but the main one was that every story he talked about of him having fun with his friends, he was drunk/drinking heavily during the events, regardless of if his friends were. Besides the fact that I don't want someone who drinks because I have an alcoholic father, if you need alcohol to have fun, that's not attractive, especially if you are the only one drinking in a social gathering. That's embarrassing. Story 13. Denim jacket covered in pins. Like every inch was covered in pins of the Beatles, Bernie Sanders, companies, ECT, and she explained that some of her previous dates describe it as peacocking, which I had never heard that phrase before, so she then explained it means overly expressing yourself through fashion in order to seem more interesting. And I just kinda agreed that she was in fact doing that, so she got super pissed and defensive. Honestly just confused by the entire interaction. Story 14. Had a first date with a nice enough woman, ordered a ton of food, left with a huge bag of takeout at the end of the date. As we were walking out, we saw a homeless guy shivering in front of an empty storefront. It was late October, and you could see he had been out in the streets for a long time. I walked over and gave him what amounted to a small feast. She turned her nose up at him and said, "I would never help a loser like that." I politely turned and thanked her for her time. "Your empathy button must be broken. I can't date you. Have a good night." I saw her to her car and never spoke to her again. Story 15. The date went really well. I was only looking for something casual, and so was he. The chemistry and connection were good. The kiss goodbye was meh. The last thing he said on top of that sealed it for me. Great. It'll be a few weeks, but I'm sure I'll be able to fit you in my rotation. I don't expect to be the only one you see, but if your rotation is so big that it'll be weeks before I'm blessed with an opening, I have a feeling that my enjoyment is not going to be the focus, and that's a hard pass. Story 16. I showed up for a date in my early 20s in jeans and very little makeup because I had done some day labor for extra money that day and didn't have time to do more than take a shower so I didn't stink. My mohawk was down in a ponytail as well. Within half an hour, my date said something to the effect of, "I'm so glad you're not one of those fake girls that wears gobs of makeup and crazy heels and spends hours on their hair." I was still unsure enough of how to express certain feminist ideas I held at that age that I wasn't really equipped to call him out effectively, but I did say something to the effect of, "Sometimes I am." And I knew after that there would be no further dates. There was also zero chemistry. I hate when men try to ingratiate themselves by comparing me against other women and femmes. I want you to like me, not hate other women and settle for me because you supposedly hate me less. Sometimes I'm a jeans, boots, and no makeup guy, but I am also the kind of extra to glue sequins to my face sometimes. If this dude was put off by glam extravagance, we were not going to be a good fit. I hate when men try to tell me how to look. I may or may not shave various parts of my body at any given time, and I prefer a mate who isn't too heavily attached to those details and will find me attractive regardless of what fashion mood hit me that week. Whether I'm bald or in a full face of makeup or have hairy armpits, you're a lucky motherfucker to spend time with me or see me naked, and you better know it if we're going to work. Story 17. I met her on a dating app, and we talked a couple weeks before we met in person. We end up meeting up at a restaurant. During our conversation, completely out of nowhere, she starts going on about how she used to bang all these college football players and went into detail about how she got tag-teamed at a party. Then she started going on about how recently she's been sleeping with a lot of local cops. This was completely out of nowhere. She then started questioning me about the last time I had sex, and I told her she giggled, as if it was too long, and took it as her trying to make me feel shameful for it being too long. Well, I thought this girl is weird, but maybe we can at least have sex, but at the end of the night I asked her if she wanted to come over and she told me, I don't have sex on the first date. I didn't hit her up again. She did, however, send me a big text a few days later claiming I led her on and said something along the lines of, all you mean are the same. I just blocked her and didn't respond. Story 18. I was on a first date. She said I was charming and sweet. Then she said her last date wasn't so charming and sweet and proceeded to tell me in great detail how she and two dudes conspired to trick her last date into going to a remote location where they beat the shit out of him. Maybe he deserved it, and maybe he didn't, but that was all I needed to nope out of any further contact. Later, I got contacted by a rando friend of a friend saying he had a message to pass on. Would I please reconsider the second date? Yeah, no, imagine that story with the genders flipped. Hell no. Story 19. Finally get to use this. So I met a woman when I was in my late teens, so like 19 I think, but she was quite a bit older, 27 or so. She worked down the road from my family business, and OMG, she was gorgeous and very well endowed, LOL. Well, after months of seeing her in the store and lots of flirting, I asked her to dinner. Dinner is great, but she doesn't say much about herself, just tons about me, which honestly should have been a red flag after she used her foot to rub my happy area to avoid questions. We go back to her place, and after a very fun time, she lets me know her husband needs to approve of me, but she thinks he will be perfectly fine with it, as if timing couldn't be any worse. I see headlights pull in her drive, and the biggest, meanest-looking dude I had ever seen coming up the drive, and he is not happy. So imagine Hulk walking up, since the dude was easily 6'5" and 240, and angry. So I grabbed my clothes, put my shoes on, and went through the back window, butt naked except shoes. As I'm running, she is yelling, and then I see the back gate slam open, and OMG, he looked like a super soldier chasing me down the alley. Well, needless to say, he was gaining on me when she came flying up behind me, yelling to get in the car. She took me back to her front yard to get my car, and thank God he hadn't made it back yet. Needless to say, I never went back to the store and was very nervous for months, worrying he would find me. Oh, and no, he didn't approve of her flings, and I was way more careful after that. Story 20. I went on a date with this girl when I was 17, and we went to the movies and went to eat after, and a homeless guy comes up and starts talking all this nonsense, cussing and screaming. We walk away and I tell her, wow, glad we got out of there. And she turns to me and said, that's my dad, Lamau. Walked her home and I was gone. Story 21. I was a teenager and met a guy at a bar. Then he wanted to meet up and decided to come over to my house. He then proceeded to brag to my mum about all the times he'd been in trouble with the police. Mum and I devised a plan to get him out ASAP. Still saw him a few times at the bar after that, but he hated me as I told my friends and they kept saying, I'm Walter, and I am too fucking dumb to even take a shit. Story 22. Date was going pretty okay. We decide to go to a restaurant after we had a drink at a bar. We're about to start eating our food when she says, I couldn't work in food service. I ask curiously, how come? She responds, because I'd spit in everyone's food. And this was after she complained about what sounded like total nothing burgers about her nursing position. To top it off, we start the walk back to the car and she then puts a stick of chewing gum in her mouth. At least that's what I thought I saw. Because then she asked me if I want one, so I turn to face her and she's holding in her mouth a lit cigarette and is offering me one. I am a never smoker, and this was never mentioned anywhere in her dating profile or our date. I politely said, no thanks, and she said, but it's Davidoff. As if I would know what that means, LOL. Had to ghost her after that. Story 23. I met this guy when he came into the law office I worked at, grad school job, for his bar character interview, and he asked me out for dinner. He was cute, clearly had already passed the bar, and the lawyer at my firm who had interviewed him said he seemed like a good guy. So why the hell not? I show up at the restaurant. He's charming and funny. It's going well until it's time to order. He ordered for me without even asking me. I was honestly too shocked, so say anything. It was so out of left field. Trying to recover, I ask about what his hobbies are, and he immediately launches into an animated spiel about how he volunteers at a men's rights advocate and specializing in suing women whose boyfriends want to block them from having an abortion. For context, I've been a clinic escort for over 20 years now, not to mention a former clinic worker. I founded the pro-choice group at my university during undergrad. I simply stood up, grabbed my purse, and excused myself to the bathroom. I got in the first cab I saw and never heard from him again. Dodged a massive bullet with that one. Story 24. I know we already talked about our kinks, but I forgot to tell you that I wear diapers. I'm wearing one now. We were meeting for coffee. We had talked about kinks beforehand, But this is one of the very few times in my life I was absolutely stunned into silence. I had no idea how to respond. Also had a first date once where they told me I smelled just like their ex. There was a second date on that occasion, but in hindsight there really shouldn't have been.